Okay, call the meeting to order. The first item is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Minutes of the February 22nd, 2022 board meeting.
Move to approve. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. We'll set the date for a public hearing on the max levy notice. And I'm guessing you're familiar with what we have to do now. We set one hearing for our max levy, and all that is saying that's the most that we can levy. And then after that, we'll have what I call our real budget hearing. And this is March the 8th.
Move to approve. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Resolution number 14, 2022, approval and award of contract for this bridge is over 15th, it's on 15th Street and it's over Brush Creek. This is awarding the contract.
Move the resolution. Second.
Any questions or comments?
Is that a project that's gonna still get done this fiscal year? You know, or?
Well, it'll be started this fiscal year. Our hope is it'd be done this year, but
Probably not this fiscal year, probably go
be done this year.
this year.
But probably after July 1st or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that depends on the weather too, you know, how wet it is. Okay. Okay, I had, Mr. Fisher had talked to me before and he had sent me some information about a problem that's existing in the West End. You almost have to look at the situation to fully understand it, but I grew up there and his dad lived in that house then. And the house is relatively close to the railroad tracks. Now, I own property on the other side of the railroad track, but there's not a house there. In his situation, the train pulls up there. The engine stops just what will be a few feet from his house and they leave it running. And they will at times get in the van and take off and it sits there for hours. And he had requested that if there's something we can do, and I told him we have dealt for years with the Quincy crossing and it took a long time, but now they have had some success over there. And so he was going to give us a presentation this morning in hopes that we would get involved and send the railroad a letter to try and get them to back up half mile. If you get off up by Etta Street, there are no houses around that at all. So I gave him a brief explanation. So this is Brian Fisher. He lives in the house. Would you like to?
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for your time and consideration of this matter. This is an ongoing problem. This is something that's I've been fighting for years, to be quite honest with you. What frustrates me the most is I've reached out. It's the Burlington Northern Santa Fe line, by the way, BNSF. I've reached out to them continually, constantly trying to, just ask them why this location. And my home is not the only home near there. We're in residential area. There's houses all around me. But what they do is they park and they leave the train running idle. There's been times that they've sat there for days, for literally day in and day out. When was that? Last Thursday, they parked, got in the van, left. And now when these trains sit there, it's not just a train. It's just a single train. It's multiple engines. It's usually, I don't know if you folks have noticed by now, but there's usually one engine, two engine, three engine. There's at least 3 locomotives that are all usually tied in together. And what I was saying earlier about being frustrated is I've contacted BNSF. There's an 800 number that you can call on the blocked crossings. They do block a few crossings. They are, they're not public, they are public crossings, but they're not used adamantly, used continually. They're more of a farmer, they reach a farmer's field. And how he has the time with it, I'm not quite sure. Mr. Schaefer, I know, used to own the fields across the railroad tracks there. I don't know if he still does or not, but so when I call this 800 number, it's gotten to a point now where they just simply and rudely hang up on me. I mean, they know who I am by now. I call and I state my name, I state my concern, and just blatantly just hang up on me. They've done that several times. So recently I've been asking for the file number. I say I would like to file a noise complaint. Idling trains in a residential area for a prolonged period of time. And so I say, can I get a file number and your name, the operator's name? And they just hang up on me. It's been several times. BNSF will not contact me back, will not give me no explanation as to why they have to park right here. Now, just outside, less than half of a mile going west would be city limits, Tacoma city limits, just right outside of city limits. How come they can't park there? There's less, housing, less, it's out in six, less than half of a mile. I looked it up. I think it was, I don't quite remember the approximate. I think it's less than half of a mile. I know that, just right outside of city limits. It just, it's frustrating. And so when they do park there on a constant basis, as they do finally prepare to leave, you've got to keep in mind that these multiple engines, okay, so it starts, it revs, the RPMs get higher and higher. So as they progress towards east, you hear a constant and it rattles my house, something fierce. I found a pretty massive crack in my home's foundation here recently, which is scary. It's very frightening. I know I can't really, I probably don't have a leg to stand on as far as saying that the crack was due to the railroad trains. But I mean, I think I could make a pretty good point. It's not helping matters none. When those trains set there, I know that they're there because I feel them on my floorboard of my home. I always know when one's sitting there because my home's rattling, so to speak. It's shaking. I'm just asking for just assistance. I need some help. They won't listen to me. Perhaps they'll listen to the city of Ottumwa. That's really.
And you've reached out, I believe. Jerry gave us copies of stuff to Grassley's office.
Yes, I've got all that. Yes, I've talked to Mr. I haven't talked to him directly. I've talked to Mr. Grassley's assistant, and they've been somewhat helpful in the matter. They've tried their best. It's a frustrating situation. It upsets me that they won't have any correspondence with me. Call me back. Let me know when I call. When I leave several voicemails on the human resources voicemail box, I say, please, I state who I am and my concern, and nothing. They just blatantly will not contact me back.
Did I see that packet where the railroad detective did contact you? And nothing ever came of that?
No, it's still an ongoing problem. I just like an answer. I just like to know why they have to park inside city limits right there at Edda Street. It's I think they call it Samantha, because Samantha runs east and west, but it's to us West Enders. It's always been Edda Street, but I believe the Burlington Northern would consider that as Samantha Street. It's just a frustrating situation, and it's daily. It's nightly. Try sleeping next to an idling train. I mean, the engines don't run as high as they would when they're regularly moving, but they still run. They don't shut them off. I believe that's a mechanical thing. I believe they can't shut them off due to combustion or whatever it is. But even that, I don't even have any answers on why they have to leave them running. It's extremely frustrating. There is 2 blocked crossings that they often block. They often block the one on Samantha Street, which is, I have the number here. There is a crossing block 079424D as in David. And that's the one there on Etta Street. And then there's one just outside the city limits, not far outside the city limits. It's 079423W. And yeah, like I said, I mean, these aren't crossings that are used on a frequent basis, but they still are crossings nonetheless. You know, it's just,
Yeah, one of them's my crossing there
that's
at Etta. And when I go out there, I took someone out there from Wingers to show them something, and we made the mistake of crossing over the tracks with our vehicles, and we were stuck there for hours, and we were calling, trying to get them to move. So now we can't go over there and park. We have to park this side of the tracks and on the road. And they could put the train back there, pull their van right up there to that crossing where there's no houses. We have found that one of the things railroads don't like is adverse publicity. So when I suggested you bring it here, maybe we'll have an article in the paper about it. And
I actually had articles with them as well. They did news feed on KTVO and KYOU both. That's been 2 years ago. And nothing. I mean, it's a frustrating matter. Just contact me back. Let's talk man to man. I want to know why you have to park right here inside city limits. Also, I want to state that a lot of times they don't just park there, Mr. Parker, right there at your property. A lot of times when they block that crossing, that very crossing we was talking about, they'll park right beside my house. I mean, right next to my house. So I call and I say, I give them the crossing number and I say, you're blocking this crossing. Please back up, please move. And a lot of times the 50-50, they will actually take the locomotive and they'll back up and leave that crossing next to your property there unblocked. Sometimes now, not every time, but yeah, I mean, I know that they you know, I don't know about these crossings because like I said, they're not used frequently, but still nonetheless they are crossings and they are there for a reason and they block them all the time. That last one I read, it's more just outside of city limits. There are fields. I don't think that those fields are farmed anymore. I haven't never seen any harvest in quite a while, but I hope nobody ever plans on farming those fields because when those trains sit there for days, I don't know how they get across, but it's frustrating, just an extremely frustrating matter.
well, I had told him that we could start by saying, if you direct the chair to send a letter to him stating the situation, that'd be a start, right?
Yes, I'm Brian's father. I sold Brian our home. When I lived there, the train did the same things. I had to go to bed at night. In order to get any sleep, I had to put plugs in my ears. I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah, it's a nuisance. I mean, it is just downright.
I didn't sell the house. When I sold the house, I wasn't having that trouble. I thought it was over with it. All of a sudden, it disappeared. They started parking some further down.
Yeah, there are times, just exactly like last night, as a matter of fact, there are times that they will park down closer towards the bus farms, down past Paris Street. Rare, but they have done it. They have parked there a few times. But for the most part, they park right there on Samantha, Etta Street for days, for hours at a time.
Of course, if they go further down, they're by Paris Street, then they're gonna start getting a complaint in the camping area down
Yeah,
there.
the campground's right there by Turkey
So that's
Island.
not gonna work very good.
I just don't understand why they can't park just outside city limits, less than half of a mile, just right before the city limit sign, and there would be no issues, but I can't get an answer. I can't, they won't.
We'll write them a letter. And if you have a particular person you think we should address it to, let me know, or I'll go through the material you've given us and we can send more than one to more than one person. And I'll give you copies of the letter and any response we get.
I have a lot of video footage. I have surveillance on my property, so my YouTube channel was full of another issue that I'd like to bring up is not only the noise, but the pollution. The toxins that come out of them stacks, the smokestacks of those multiple engines. I've got it on film. I've got it up. They park right next to Union Park. Union Park is out there and the city baseball field is out there. The stuff that comes out of those stacks, those locomotive stacks is horrendous. I mean, on a windy day, you can smell it from my back porch, you know. If I can smell it, I know the kids at the Union Park and the baseball fields can surely smell it, you know. It's not only a sound nuisance, but it's also polluting our city park and our neighborhood all together.
So that line is a double track, Marty,
It is.
right? Is it worse when the trains are going one way or the other? When they're
It's
coming in
always-
or going out?
Well, it's always the eastbound trains.
Okay.
We never have any issues with the westbound trains. Westbound trains, they pass by, they wave, and then they're gone. But it's always the eastbound trains coming from the west, of course. And I think it's usually track one, I believe. It's one of the tracks that they will set for days. A lot of times it's
How far is your house then from the cross?
I am just under 300 feet away from the tracks, as well as all my neighbors. I mean, we have, there's several different houses out there. We're just under 300 feet.
Aren't you the closest one?
Yeah,
There's no one south of you. They're just,
no. Glasgow's would be the next ones, they're probably 320 feet maybe. I mean, it's a residence. I mean, there are, I'm not the only house there, but I would be the closest towards the
What street do you live on?
Graves, South Graves, GRAV, yes.
The house on Graves.
Yeah, we didn't used to be. There used to be several of us down there on South Graves until the flood of 93 pretty much wiped out the neighborhood.
Do the trains just completely obstruct the crossing, the engine?
Several times.
It's completely
Oh, yes.
across.
Oh, yes.
Nobody can even
Several times.
try to get
For
around.
hours, for days, several times, yeah. Yeah, there are times that they'll park just right before the crossing, the main crossing. But a lot of times, yeah, they go right past.
Do the gates come down there?
There are no
when they
gates.
stop short? Oh,
There are no gates now. See, it's not necessarily a frequent crossing, you know, they are crossings nonetheless, but there's no gates, nothing. And when the trains do park just before the crossing, it's still dangerous. I mean, if you was to come around and you know, you'd have to try to look around that train to see if there's anything coming, you know, if there's another train coming. But, yeah, I mean, it's just a constant nuisance, constant.
How long has this been going on?
I've been battling this fight for a little over 3 years now, but it's been going on longer than that. Yeah,
I had to go through
yeah,
it.
I would say at least close to a decade. They've been parking it, close to 10 years. They've been parking it. They didn't used to back in, you know, years ago in the 90s and in the 80s. That was the good old days. That was when it was one engine, one train, and a caboose, you know. And then that's another thing. So there's a lot of times that they have, I think they call them super trains. They'll have 3 or 4 engines here that park. And then when they do finally leave, then there will be 2 or 3 engines in the middle. So they'll go by, and then at the end, they'll have 3 or 4 engines there. So it isn't just, you know, people think, oh, who cares? It's just a train. Well, it's not just a train. It's several engines, several all tied together, you know.
And they spill a lot of air. Sit there and listen to that whole night.
Yeah, it's not just a revving sound. It's a sporadic hiss, clack, bang, boom. You know, it isn't just the rumble of an engine. It's several different distinctive ear-piercing sounds.
Are they changing crews there? Do they have a van there, or are they just?
Often, when they sat there for days, yeah, the van will pull up and guys will get down, crawl down off the engines, lock the door, jump in the van, and they'll be gone for days for days at a time, days and nights. But a lot of times they don't. They'll still park there. They'll block the crossing and they'll sit there anywhere from 3 hours to 6 hours. I know all this because, like I said, I have surveillance on my property, so I time them. I see him. Oh, well, he sat there from 1 o'clock until 6 o'clock in the morning, you know. And it's usually at night. A lot of times they'll park there at night and they'll sit and they'll rattle my windows and shake my foundation, something fierce.
Well, we'll instruct Jerry to send the letters to whoever they need to go to, and
I'll get you copies of them and I'll get you copies of any response. And you know, if you're familiar with that area, generally you would think, okay, let's back it up and get it away from his house. And then what you're doing is you're irritating someone else.
Yeah.
But that's not the case here. You back up, there isn't any houses up there. And even the Little League fields are maybe 200 yards or more. Union Park is 200 yards from the railroad tracks. So there is an opportunity to correct it by just backing up. It's not moving the problem to somebody else. It's actually correcting it. So
I spoke with a gentleman named Zach Simpson.
Yeah.
Chili.
Yeah.
He was with the mayor's, Zach Simpson.
Simonson.
Simonson. Yeah, I just spoke with him a couple days ago, and he tried to get information as well, and they just, I suppose they view Ottumwa as just a dot on the map, you know. They just
well,
don't-
and I think Jerry kind of told you, and even from your correspondence or with Grassley's office or whatever, the laws on trains go back 150,
Yes.
175 years, however long, and you hate saying it, there's just so much that they're above the law almost on.
Are you Zach?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not.
Because that's pretty much what he told me too.
Yeah.
He said, you know, it's like, they're game, you know,
Yeah.
they've got the right of way. It's upsetting that, if I was to come to your house and park next to your house and rev my engine for hours, for days, I should be arrested. I would, you know, you could call it city nuisance and there I'd be, but we can't do that with the trains, you know, even though they're inside our city limits and they're, you know, violating our, you know, the noise, you know,
Ordinance.
there's nothing we can do about it, apparently. That's what I'm finding out.
Well, we'll take that step. That's about as close as we can do for now anyway. But then, like I said, if
Concerned the fact that blocking crossings, is that really?
The fact that they're parking there, period, not so much blocking the crossings, but just
parking there.
just
forever.
parking there and setting for days.
thank you.
I'll keep you posted on what we're sending and what we're receiving.
I appreciate it.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no.
Send the letter.
Appointment to Planning and Zoning Board. Wileen. First, it's going to give us now to where we have a quorum. And it's also helping us by the gender balance. We're going to have 2 ladies on there now. So
Move to approve.
Second.
all in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no. Approval of Optum Managed Transplant Program through United Healthcare. This is an annual approval. It's the transplant program for our health insurance and where we buy an extra policy to cover some the very big items, and there's no premium increase.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Personnel, request for payroll approval, new hire, deputy county attorney. This is one of those positions that, about a month ago, Ruben came to us and asked if we could make some pay adjustments in county attorneys to be able to get and keep people attorneys. And this is the one, it's going to be his deputy.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Anything else to come before the board? We've had a request, you probably got the email too, about they want to use the courtroom for about an hour and a half for filming for the murder case that was in Atumwa a few years ago. And the 3 different courts where they held it, and one of them was here. So they want to film. They will provide us with the proper insurance. They're also going to do it in Davenport where one of the others was. So any objections to them being here?
Which murder case was this?
Tekel. And we've had I talked to Ruben this morning and I talked to the assessor, the Washington Apartments. When you're building apartments that are for low income, there are certain credits you get, but you have to timely file. They missed their filing date, so their taxes went from, I'll just make up a figure, 50,000 to 170,000. And that was noticeable to them. So they wrote us and want to know if there's anything we can do. And after talking to Ruben and Gary, I suggested that when we've had situations like a church before, where a pastor lives in the parsonage, they don't pay property taxes. But if the pastor moves out and they rent it, then they pay property taxes. Well, sometimes a new pastor comes in and they want it, and they don't tell us that they've moved in and they should not be paying taxes. But once they notify us, we have backed up and abated those taxes for that year. That's a solution to this here. Gary says, the assessor, they would be entitled to it had they just got their request into him in time. But the code doesn't allow him to say, okay, you were a little late, I'll change it. If it's changed, we have to do it. So we can't do it today, but I'll prepare the paperwork if that's the route we want to go.
That's fine. Good chunk of that goes into TIF anyway, doesn't it?
Probably.
Yeah.
So I will have that on the agenda in a week or so. And then Ruben will tell them, okay, that's what we're going to do.
Works for me.
Anything else to come before the board? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
If you guys don't want to, we can stay here, you know. Have a motion